She told me the baby was mine until the gender reveal included a guy she said was just a frenny. When the blue confetti burst into the air, I already knew the baby wasn't mine. I stood there smiling like a trained dog, holding her hand, hearing the crowd cheer around us. My fiancé was glowing, laughing, hugging everyone. Friends clapped my back, cameras flashed, some cousins screamed, "It's a boy!" like we just won the lottery. But I wasn't even looking at her. I was looking at Tom. Tom. The just a friend she'd known since childhood. Tom. The one she swore had always been like a brother. Tom. Who helped organize the gender reveal party because he knows my taste better than anyone. Tom. Who somehow always showed up in every memory of her that made me uneasy. He stood off to the side, holding a drink, wearing that same smug half-smile I'd come to despise. Not because he did anything wrong, not outright at least, but because deep down I think I always knew. And the way she looked at him in that moment, for just a second, was not the way you look at a friend. It was the way you look at someone who knows your body better than anyone, someone who knows your secrets, someone who knows the truth. That moment, confetti in the air, everyone cheering, her hand in mine but her eyes on him, cracked something inside me, and I think a part of me started dying long before that, long before the blue streamers rained down and I realized I wasn't just losing my trust in her, I was losing the future I thought I was building. But let me rewind. Maybe I should have known the moment she first mentioned him. It was early on in our relationship, maybe 2 months in, over dinner when she casually said, "Oh, you'd get along with Tom, he's hilarious. We've known each other since we were kids." I shrugged it off. I mean, I had female friends too. I wasn't going to be that guy. But Tom's name kept coming up. They went to the same college. They had the same friend group. They both loved film festivals and obscure documentaries about Soviet architecture. Yeah, I wish I was making that up. At first, it was just references. Then it was photos. Then it was, he might stop by for drinks. I met him once. Once was enough. He was charming, I'll give him that. Tall, lean, charismatic. The kind of guy who makes everything feel like a joke, including your own insecurities. He called me big guy, even though I was taller than him. He hugged her for just a second too long. When she introduced us, he looked me up and down like he was calculating whether or not I was a real threat. Apparently, I wasn't. After that, I kept it cool. I didn't want to seem controlling. But I paid attention. I noticed the late-night texts. Tom just sent me this meme look, the long phone calls she'd take outside, the way her mood changed after talking to him. I told myself it was nothing. I had to trust her, right? Then came the pregnancy. We weren't trying. In fact, things had been kind of cold between us physically. Work stress, her new promotion, my mother's health issues. But one morning she came out of the bathroom crying and holding a positive test. I remember holding her, thinking, this is it. This is our next chapter. I didn't think twice. I wanted to be a father. I wanted to build a family. I wanted her. And for a while, everything felt perfect. We started talking about baby names. We picked out colors for the nursery. We even told our parents over dinner, and her mom cried. I thought I was finally where I was meant to be. But then, Tom started showing up more. He offered to help plan the gender reveal party. Said he wanted it to be epic. I said I'd handle it. It was my kid after all. But she told me not to be so uptight. Tom just gets it, she said. You're always so busy with work. I tried to protest, but she was already messaging him, giggling over some Pinterest board. The day of the party, he showed up 2 hours early. He brought balloons, sound equipment, a custom cake that said, "Boy or girl, let's twirl." I wanted to strangle him, but I kept smiling, because if I didn't smile, I'd scream. And no one wants a screaming fiancé at a baby party. I watched him that whole afternoon, watched how easily he moved in her world, how he knew where everything was in our kitchen, how he made her laugh without trying, how she leaned into him when she laughed, and he didn't lean away. And when the time came to pop the big balloon, the one filled with blue or pink confetti, I felt like I was about to detonate a grenade. I held the needle. She held my hand. I remember my hand trembling. Everyone counted down. 3, 2, 1. Population. Blue. The air filled with color. The crowd erupted. I smiled. And then I saw her eyes search for his. And I knew. I didn't say anything that night. I went through the motions, helped clean up, hugged people goodbye, thanked them for coming. I posed for pictures with her, smiling like a man who just found out he was having a son. A son. That word kept twisting in my gut like a rusty screw. She kept looking at me like everything was perfect, like we were closer than ever. Like this child, this moment, had sealed something unbreakable between us. I kissed her forehead, told her I was happy, told her I loved her, and I did. But I also hated myself. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her soft breathing next to me. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg her to tell me the truth, but what was I going to say? Hey, I noticed you made deep eye contact with your childhood friend at the moment we found out our baby's gender, and now I'm suspicious that this baby might not be mine. It sounded insane. I sounded insane. But something inside me wouldn't shut up. That voice that had been whispering since the beginning, it was louder now. Cruel, repeating the same line again and again. It's not yours, it never was. The next morning, I told her I needed to catch up on some work and stayed in my home office all day. But I wasn't working. I was researching, reading stories, looking up timelines, comparing dates. Our last time being intimate. The dates she gave me. The way her nausea had started before she even missed a period. Something felt off. And then I made a decision I'm not proud of. I checked her phone. I waited until she was in the shower, heart pounding like I was defusing a bomb. She had no lock. She trusted me. That made it worse. There wasn't much. No flirty texts. No, I love yous to Tom. She kept it clean, but there were voice notes, quick little things, inside jokes, a few late-night timestamps. One in particular stood out. A message sent at 1:13 a.m., 2 days before she told me she was pregnant. I played it. Hey, I know it's late. Just thinking about that night again, I don't regret it. I wish things were simpler. I wish I could tell him. I didn't need to hear more. I sat there, phone in hand, mouth dry, pulse thudding in my ears. My brain tried to come up with alternate explanations. Maybe it wasn't about sex. Maybe she was talking about something else. Maybe that night meant anything but what I knew it meant. But I wasn't that naive anymore. I backed up the message, emailed it to myself, then I put her phone back and went into the bathroom to throw up. The next few days passed in a fog. She was so happy, constantly planning, sending me baby furniture links. She started a private Instagram for the baby bump updates, called it Our Little Adventure. I watched her pose in front of the mirror, holding her stomach, beaming at her reflection. She was glowing. She looked beautiful, and I couldn't look at her without picturing him. I knew I needed proof. Real proof. Something undeniable. I couldn't confront her with just a voice note. She'd cry, tell me it meant nothing, that it was just a mistake, a one-time thing, and worse. Part of me would want to believe her, because believing her would mean I still had a future with her, with the baby. But I didn't want to live a lie. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I ordered a prenatal paternity test. It wasn't easy. It wasn't cheap. I had to call a discreet clinic, set up appointments under a false name. I pretended I was organizing something for a friend. I told her I wanted to do a checkup with a private doctor. She didn't question it. I waited like a man on death row. The results took 10 days. 10 days of pretending. 10 days of watching her rub her belly and talk to our son. 10 days of trying not to cry when she wasn't looking. When the email finally came, I stared at the subject line for a full hour before opening it. Paternity probability, 0.00%. I think I stopped breathing. It was there in black and white. DNA from her. DNA from the fetus. Compared to mine. And nothing matched. Not even close. I sat in my office, staring at the screen. Completely hollow. The sun moved across the floor. My phone buzzed with a message from her. Can you pick up oat milk on your way home? Baby brain strikes again. I typed, sure, and hit send. Then I closed the laptop, printed the test results, and slid them into a plain white envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just sat there, finally free of the voice in my head. It had been right all along. I kept the envelope in my desk drawer for 3 days. Every morning, I'd wake up and tell myself today's the day. I'd pull it out, stare at the words, rehearse the confrontation in my head, and then put it back. She was just so happy. She'd sing to her belly when she thought I wasn't listening. She was nesting, folding tiny onesies, color-coding drawers with labels like 3 to 6 months and newborn. She had a special app that told her which vegetable the baby was in size that week. Apparently, we were now the proud parents of a butternut squash. I started sleeping on the couch. I told her it was her tossing and turning that kept waking me up. I didn't want to disturb her rest. She actually thanked me for being so thoughtful. It made me sick. I didn't hate her. That was the worst part. I hated what she did, but I still loved her. Or maybe I loved who I thought she was. Either way, I couldn't stay in that house much longer without losing my mind. I needed a plan. And I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And I wanted out. I started planning the baby shower. It was supposed to be in 3 weeks, hosted at her parents' place. She was excited about the Little Prince theme. Gold crowns, blue and white balloons, little cupcakes with plastic swords. She sent me a list of people she wanted to invite. Tom was on it, obviously. He's been such a big part of everything, she said. Yeah, no kidding. That's when the idea came to me. The envelope, the test results, the perfect stage. I wasn't going to humiliate her. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to end it, clean and sharp, like a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I called her parents and offered to pay for everything. Told them I'd take over the decorations and logistics to take some pressure off her. Her mom was thrilled, said I was the perfect fiancé. I smiled through the phone and said, I just want what's best for the baby. That line tasted like ash in my mouth. I rented a projector, hired a photographer, set up a table near the cake labeled Memories and Messages, where guests could write wishes for the baby and drop them in a wooden box. And underneath that table, I placed a sealed envelope, mine, labeled to be opened at the right time. The morning of the shower, she wore a pale blue maternity dress. She looked like something out of a movie. Glowing, graceful, so full of joy it hurt to look at her. I drove us there in silence, and she kept humming along to some Taylor Swift song on the radio. Her dad gave a speech. Her mom cried. People handed us little blue gift bags and tiny shoes. I took photos, smiled on cue, pretended. And then it was time for the video surprise. I told everyone I had a montage. Clips of us, ultrasound videos, well wishes from friends. She looked at me, surprised. When did you make that? I wanted to do something special, I said, and kissed her cheek. Everyone gathered around. The projector flickered on. The screen lit up with music and photos of us, laughing in the park, hugging in the kitchen, holding the first ultrasound printout. She teared up. People sighed. And then the screen cut to black. Words appeared. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive in 9 months. Sometimes it comes with a test. The next slide was a scanned image of the paternity test results. It zoomed in slowly on the line. Paternity probability, 0.00%. Silence. Dead. Suffocating silence. She stood completely still, one hand frozen on her belly. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. Her mom gasped. Her dad muttered something like, Jesus Christ. And then I stepped forward, pulled the envelope from under the table, and placed it on the cake stand. I looked at her, calm as I've ever been in my life, and said, I loved you. I wanted a family with you, but I won't be the fool who raises another man's child, especially not his. I didn't even need to say Tom's name. The entire room turned to him. He was pale, wide-eyed, stammering. I didn't know it was a mistake, okay? Someone laughed, not the funny kind, the kind that makes your spine itch. Then one of her friends, I think her name was Marissa, blurted, You slept with her. I knew it. I freaking knew it. You two were always so sketchy. Everything exploded at once. People yelling, her crying, her mother sobbing, her father shouting at Tom. Someone knocked over the cupcakes. Someone else dropped a tray of drinks. I walked out. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I walked out the front door, got into my car, and drove away from the war zone I had just calmly, methodically set on fire. I didn't answer her texts that night. I didn't answer her calls the next day. I moved out by the end of the week. I stayed at my brother's place for the first few days. I told him the basics. Not everything. And he didn't ask for more. He just handed me a beer, turned on some mindless action movie, and let me sit in silence. That kind of understanding was rare, and I clung to it like a life raft. The world outside kept spinning, but mine had collapsed inward. All I had left were fragments. Of love, of betrayal, of dreams that were never real. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when the projector flashed those words. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel victory. I just felt hollow. She messaged me nonstop. At first, it was denial. It's wrong. It has to be wrong. The test is fake. You're the only one I was with. Then panic. Please, can we talk? Let's do another test. Please don't do this. Then it turned to anger. You humiliated me. You ruined everything. I trusted you. That one almost made me laugh. She trusted me? After that, I blocked her number. Her parents reached out, apologizing for her confusion, offering to pay for therapy if I needed it. I declined. They meant well, I think, but I couldn't stand the idea of being pitied. I didn't tell my parents the full story either, just said the engagement was off and it was too complicated to explain. My mom cried, but didn't push. My dad patted my shoulder and said, Whatever happened, son, I'm proud of you for walking away. That meant more than he'll ever know. About a week later, I saw Tom. Or rather, I saw him trying to see me. I was at a coffee shop near my brother's building, just trying to get some air. He walked in, saw me, and froze. His eyes darted like a scared animal. I locked eyes with him and didn't move. He hesitated for a moment, maybe debating if he should come over, then turned around and walked right back out the door. Coward! I found out later from a mutual friend that he and she weren't even speaking anymore. Apparently, after I left the party, her father had thrown him out and told him never to come near their family again. She'd tried to convince her parents it was a one-time thing, but no one believed her anymore. The damage was done. I didn't care if they ended up together. I wasn't going to waste another second caring about either of them. But it still hurt. Grief is weird like that. It's not just about mourning the person you lost. It's mourning the version of your life that died with them. The family dinners, the first steps, the bedtime stories, the Sunday mornings with pancakes and cartoons, all gone. And I had to kill it myself to finally be free. I started running again. First thing in the morning, pounding pavement until my lungs burned. I started eating better. Sleeping better. Once I stopped having those dreams where she was holding a baby with my eyes, and I had to wake up and remember none of it was real. It wasn't quick. It wasn't clean. But slowly, I began to come back to myself. About 2 months later, I got a message from someone unexpected. Rachel. She was the photographer at the gender reveal party, hired through one of my ex's event planning friends. We'd barely spoken at the event, just enough for her to ask where the lighting was best. But the message was kind. Hey, I know this is weird, and you probably don't want to hear from anyone who was there that day, but I just wanted to say that what you did took guts. I've seen a lot of parties. Never seen one end like that. Never seen someone walk away with that kind of dignity. I read it 3 times, and then I responded. We started talking, slowly at first, mostly jokes, stories about her worst jobs, stories about mine. Turns out we both hated baby shower cupcakes and loved the same obscure sci-fi series. She didn't ask for details. She let me share when I was ready. We met for coffee 2 weeks later. It wasn't a date, not officially, but I dressed like it was just in case. She was different. She didn't flinch when I told her the ugly parts. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened, and when I asked her why she'd reached out in the first place, she said something that stuck with me. Because I saw the way you looked when you walked out. You weren't angry. You weren't smug. You just looked free. Like someone who finally let go of a weight they'd carried for too long. She wasn't wrong. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope again. I walked away from that chaos feeling hollow, yet strangely relieved, carrying nothing but the weight of my choices and the undeniable ache of what I'd lost. In the weeks that followed, the world outside seemed both familiar and entirely foreign. A place where memories of that day still echoed in every laugh at a family gathering, every tender word spoken by a friend, every reminder of the future I had once imagined. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of being caught in a web of lies and betrayals. Tired of trying to force myself into a role I never truly belonged to. I spent my days in quiet solitude, long walks through empty streets, nights filled with the kind of reflective silence that only heartbreak brings. I had learned that sometimes leaving isn't an act of cowardice, but of survival. I wasn't running from her, or from Tom, or from the ghost of the life we might have shared. I was running towards something unknown, a possibility that, despite all the scars, life could still be beautiful. Slowly, I began to piece myself back together. Every morning's run became a meditation. Every evening, as the dusk wrapped the city in muted hues, I let go of the memories that clung too tightly. I started writing again. Journaling wasn't just a way to keep track of my thoughts, but to slowly come to terms with my new reality. I wrote about the betrayal, the gut-wrenching pain of discovery, and the bittersweet liberation that followed. In those words, I found fragments of peace, echoes of hope that I wasn't entirely broken. Then, one breezy afternoon, the phone rang. It wasn't her. No frantic cries or desperate pleas this time. It was a message from someone I'd almost forgotten amidst the rubble. Rachel. I still remembered her words from our first meeting over coffee. The gentle but piercing observation that I looked free, as if I'd finally released a burden. Her message was simple this time. How are you holding up? Just that. And it was enough to thaw the ice around my heart, if only for a moment. We met in a quiet park, a small cafe tucked away from the relentless hum of the city. I was nervous. Not in that anticipatory way of expecting a miracle, but in the way of putting oneself on the line once more. Over steaming cups of coffee and long, meandering conversations, I found myself opening up about the raw, unvarnished truth of everything that had happened. I didn't hold back the sorrow, the rage, or the disillusionment. And Rachel listened, not with pity or judgment, but with understanding and genuine care. In that conversation, I realized that sometimes the best way to mend a broken heart was not by filling it with distractions, but by facing it head-on with someone who dared to look inside without flinching. Rachel had a way of making the wound feel less like a scar and more like a part of my story. With her, I learned that betrayal, however deep, was not the end of every narrative. There was still room for grace, for rebuilding trust in something, anything, even if it was just in the human capacity to heal. Days turned into weeks, and I found that our meetings gradually became the highlight of my week. We explored art exhibits, wandered through quiet alleys lined with blooming trees, and shared long drives with nothing but the hum of the engine and quiet reflections for company. With each encounter, I rediscovered parts of myself I had long forgotten. The patient, hopeful individual who dared to believe in love despite having been burned once before. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, and I wasn't wishing on stars for instant redemption. The pain of the past was still there, a slow throb beneath the surface. A reminder that trust could be so easily shattered. But with Rachel, every day brought a small piece of solace. A promise that even after the most devastating storms, new life could emerge. We never spoke of replacing the past or erasing the history that had once defined me. Instead, we built something new, fragile, tentative, and real. As I look back now, I see that the worst moments of my life were also the turning points. In walking away from the ruins of that shattered future, I found the courage to embrace an uncertain present. The betrayal that once seemed an unbearable weight has become part of my story. A chapter that taught me to value truth, to appreciate the bitter as much as the sweet, and to trust in the slow, relentless process of healing. And as I step into each new day, I do so with a quiet gratitude for the fact that even when everything falls apart, there is always a way to rebuild, a way to begin again.